Welcome to Urban Fantasy PH. We are creatives who live in an urban society and give readers wish fulfillment by way of our stories, which is fantasy but reflective of reality. Here, we get to talk to fellow creatives like writers, authors, artists, comic book creators, filmmakers, you name it. We create and share our art here in the Philippines as well as abroad. My name is CJ Edmunds, I'm your host, and here is today's episode. Good morning, and welcome back to another episode of Urban Fantasy PH. Now, our show is aired every Wednesday, both for Spotify as well as on my YouTube channel. So if in case you want to simply listen to us, you can do that or watch us on YouTube. Just remember to subscribe and click the bell so that you do not miss an episode. The choice to watch or to just listen is, of course, in your hands, and it is totally your choice. Today is episode 9 of our current second season and the 15th overall for the podcast as a whole. Just one more episode to go and we are done for the season. And as much as I'm excited to wrap things up properly for you all, I'm also sad that we have to take a little breather in between seasons as we work our way towards our third season this coming June, just in time for Pride Month. Now, today on the show, we have someone who prides himself on being a dreamer and a liar. Wow, lofty positions, if you ask me. Should you need a degree to be a dreamer and a liar? Hopefully not. But kidding aside, he is one productive individual. And having had his first solo show at the CCP, that's Cultural Center of the Philippines, it's clear that this man is used to having his art seen by many. Now, he has contributed to local magazines, worked as a graphic designer. Later, he became a creative director and an ad agency. But his love for storytelling definitely prevailed at the end of the day. And so he left his corporate world to pursue his passion and his dragons now. And he has done more than that. He has kept trending one work after another and one graphic novel after another. Some of his titles include Manila, which is a short story, Tales from the Kingdom of Tundo, that's book 1. There's also Tikbalang, a collection of stories, and Beneath Tangled Dreams, and his latest release, which is called Gods of Manila, Part 1. So that means we have more to look forward to because Part 1 pa lang yan. Let's welcome Mark Del Rosario to the podcast. Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me grace your show.
Oh, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for agreeing to guest on the show. And of course, for the additional loot that I got in the mail. I always feel like a kid in a candy store whenever I get new reading material. And being a fellow creative yourself, I'm sure that you also feel that way. Would you remember the first book or probably the first storybook that you ever read as a kid that sort of made you realize that, hey, reading is good, reading is nice, and that books are not just props to bring around with you or to lug around in order to look smart?
Actually, well, not as a kid. I was already teenager when I realized that. When I was a kid, I was filled with Saturday morning cartoons.
Weren't we all?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, we were quite poor back then. We really didn't have enough money to buy stuff like books because books were expensive back then. But there was Saturday morning cartoons who opened up my eyes to that. And when I was in high school, I encountered Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit.
Yes.
Yeah. You could say that was one of my gateway drugs to literature.
Mm-hmm.
That and the Ursula Le Guin.
Oh God, yes, the
Yeah,
Earthsea
the
saga.
Earthsea saga. I was introduced to A Wizard of Earthsea, so I was amazed by this. And as I said, it was kind of a gateway drug, and it opened doors to me to role playing games as well. So
Okay.
I was all over the place back then when I was in high school. Yeah, but I luckily I had friends who introduced me to role playing games, who introduced me to comic books, and aside from the me encountering these books in a library at school. So well, it got me very interested in genre, not particularly not particularly the whole literature itself, but I started out with genre. With fantasy and science fiction because of the stuff that I read. I mean, I watched and I read and I played. So there was Dungeons and Dragons, so nandun na yung
Mm,
Dragonlance,
there
Forgotten
you go.
Realms, yeah,
Yes, all of
yeah.
those.
But it was like reigning fantasy and science fiction back then, and then but my very first encounter with with a comic book that made me want to tell stories through the comic book medium was a comic book called Sectors. Saturday morning cartoons had this animation called Sectors.
Hmm.
I don't know if you remember those.
Trying to
The,
remember September. I don't think I do.
yeah, they were these insect like humanoids who had
Okay.
wings, and there was this tribal warfare and all of that. And Marvel had a comic book back then, and so
Oh.
napadaan, yeah, it was a limited series, an adaptation of the animation. So napadaan ako ng book sale, and I don't know if I can recall. Basta may isa pang comic book yun na it was like 10 pesos or 5 pesos or something like that that I bought, and then I
Yes,
was
kids, it
reading it.
was that cheap.
Yeah, it was that cheap back then. Kahit na sabihin mo second hand book, yeah, it was that cheap. So you but I already had my encounters with Batman, with Superman. Friends of mine back in elementary, they were
Yeah, I'm
introducing
flashing
me to
my
this.
shirt.
Yeah, Batman. But I wasn't really that interested because I saw these things in the TV, and I wasn't really interested in that. I was more interested in Saturday morning cartoons when I was in the elementary. It was only in high school that hey, saya pala ng comics. So yun, sectors. I think it was in third year high school, if I remember correctly. I saw that, and I remember I recalled Superman, and then watching the Adventures of Superman again in the TV, and then said drawing comic books of Superman, and then sectors, and I don't know what it was with sectors, but it inspired me to do comic books. And sabi ko sa nanay ko, Ma, I want to work for Marvel.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
syempre,
yeah,
hindi,
yeah.
syempre, that was I was just a kid back then, not realizing how the world works. So yun, doon nagsimula yan, and then more fantasy, more we were when I started, it was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. It was Dark Sun. I was enamored with Dark
Yeah.
Sun back then. We were doing a lot of
You mentioned Dungeons and Dragons. I remember, and I think I still have to the day the Dungeons and Dragons basic set that my mom gave me.
yeah. Don't sell that.
Gary Gary Gygax. So
Yeah,
I'm not sure kung saan siya napunta, but I know it's still there somewhere. Kailangan hanapin ko lang.
that's
But I never
important.
threw it. I never threw it away. It's still there.
Mhm.
I never had the chance to become a dungeon master, but that's okay. Uh,
But you played, right?
was able to play, yeah, but not
Yeah.
not as extensively as probably you guys did. It's like all I remember was I got turned into a rock baboon and naasar ako. Naasar ako sa mga kasama
Lahat
ko.
naman tayo, lahat tayo. Lahat na naglaro niyan, may encounter, may nagalit ako, ba't ako pinatay ng orc, kaya gano'n. But your first level, so,
Yeah, diba? Reklamo
gano'n
ka,
talaga.
nag-umpisa ka pa lang eh.
Umpisa ka pa lang eh.
Yeah, true. But as a kid, our families would either be the support system, if not the police that would regulate our reading habits. So I was wondering,
Mhm.
were any members of your family voracious readers?
No, no, except for me. Um, we were a practical family. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, we weren't that rich. No, we weren't that rich. We weren't even rich. We were a basic family who was my dad was a working class, but blue collar. Talaga
Mm-hmm.
all throughout. My mom was a teacher, but she was more akin to household work.
Okay.
So we were left with the TV on because of household work and all that stuff growing up. Um, my family is very practical. Uh, I became a geek only because of my friends, only because I met people. If Probably if I didn't meet the people I've met, I'd probably be a practical person as well. I'd probably be doing, I don't know, some
You'd probably
stuff
still
in
be in your, in your corporate job, and just, operating from there. But
probably,
yeah,
probably.
and since Saturday morning cartoons were the ones that piqued your interest, as well as
Hmm.
Scepter, and it's also probably the case why it's no wonder why magic and mythos are the canvas that you've chosen to operate
Yes,
within, and at the same time thrive in the process.
yes,
The first book of yours that I read prior to today was a short story that originally came out in the Philippine Graphic Magazine in
yeah.
2007, and later you revised this to become a short story, akin to a single issue of a comic, but with
Hmm.
much more fleshed out themes. So
Yeah.
I was wondering, can you tell everyone what was the inspiration of the story Manila?
Okay, Manila. Well, I was in the corporate. We had we had a long day.
Okay.
Just to say, no, not a long day, but a long week. I didn't have enough sleep, so it was a Saturday. I went to Manila. I usually go to Quiapo on a Saturday back then, and kain kang bicho bicho, and I had my sagogulaman and just wandering around, and then an inspiration for a story came to me when I was wandering around looking at yung mga manghuhula.
Mm,
They
Quiapo.
were
Yep.
yeah, scattered
There are
all
a lot of
around.
them. Yep.
And I said to myself, hey, Palanca's coming up. So I want to do a story. I want to take myself away from the corporate world and do something for Palanca. I might win. So
Yeah.
sinali ko si Manila. So I wrote Manila with that inspiration, and then I said, what's the story all about? Tell me,
Hmm.
because that's how I write. I have characters. Um, what are you? Who are you? So I asked the characters. I've learned this technique from Ray Bradbury. The characters should speak to you instead of you telling who the characters are.
Hmm.
So it's reversed. So I wrote, and then I said to myself, what if the city was alive? And then I recalled a story, a Neil Gaiman story about the sleeping cities, which was in Sandman, um, where this guy was trapped in a city. It's a sleeping city. Okay, a sleeping city. That's an interesting concept. Now, what if the cities were all dead except for one? They're not asleep; they're awake, but the people decided to kill them. So that's the concept of Manila itself. And I wrote that, and I passed it to Palanca. I didn't win, unfortunately, but I thought to myself, years after, hey, baka kulang. Baka I need to flesh out the characters.
Hmm.
So I made the comic book. So the comic book was well received, and basically that's the story of it. It's it's something that I look back and say to myself, um, the complexities of telling a story, and the how it is to translate the process of translating from short story, from fiction to comic book. So
Is
it
this the
helped me.
first one? This is the first one that you ever released as a comic, or
No,
was okay?
no, not really. But I was contemplating on how I would transcribe it to comic book format. I was writing this. No, I was doing the script for it and the storyboards while I was doing Kingdom of Tundo. And
Oh, okay.
if you see Kingdom of Tundo, it's the first episode, the first story is kind of rough.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the old issues, it's kind of rough. So I rehashed it before it became a graphic novel, and and I was I was doing Manila at the same time, and I said, oh yeah, malito, okay, I should do it like this, ganun pala. So it helped me a lot.
I love the sense of nostalgia and for simpler times in the story. And there was a line there that resonated with me, and I found myself nodding while I was reading. Let me quote that.
Sure, sure.
It says, "Cities are supposed to be communities. We have become who we are because of the people who live within us. People cared what happens to us, but now you only care what happens to yourself." Now, this was spoken by a sage-like character in the story, of which I shall not mention who, as we don't want to give away the story as much. No to spoilers,
Yeah.
as it is relevant and equally profound. I was wondering, what did you feel when you wrote this line? Was there some sort of, I don't know, accomplishment that you found because you've uncovered this universal truth that most of us are not aware, or if not unwilling, still to accept to this day?
um it's I don't know, how do I put this? It's not really more of a realization, but it's more
Mm-hmm.
of a process. You know,
Okay.
every time I go to, because I studied in FEU, so Manila is close to my heart. That part of Manila, FEU, Moraita,
The university
Quiapo,
belt, as they
yeah, the
say. Yes.
university belt. That it's close to my heart, and I've seen the degradation. I've seen what it was before World War II. I've seen the videos, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and as I walk through the streets and the empty alleyways and see the people, and I wonder to myself, you know, what's happened? Why has it become like this? Tayo ba? Or is it the city?
Mm-hmm.
Kasalanan ba ng city or kasalanan ba natin? So that question propped up while I was writing the story. And then later on, as I was making my way through the comic book, I suddenly realized na baka nga tayo,
Mm-hmm.
because cities can only be cities with its communities being people, being a community rather than being individuals living in a city and just, you know, instead of caring for the city, just caring for yourself. There is the selfishness of people, and that's what dawned on me. That's what, through the process of every time going to Manila and seeing all these things and questioning myself, what's really happening, what's really going on, and that's that phrase.
The statement felt as much as a social commentary about how we are currently living our lives and how our lives are when we were younger. And somehow, that's a theme that I'm getting and reading your work. When you begin a series, but wait, let me backtrack. When you're saying
Okay.
that the University Belt had this, a special place in your heart, and you saw how it
Hmm.
was before,
Hmm.
and sometimes I would also see myself doing that, going to YouTube and looking at old footages. Or I'm also part of this group that's called I think it's Historical Manila.
Uh,
Uh,
yeah, I think
or
I'm a
is
part
that
of that. I'm a thing at the part of that group
yeah, yeah,
too.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, when I see photos like that, and I see like, why were we not able to preserve that? And then I would see um, what I'm leading to this is I'm sure you also have an issue about buildings that have been there that are just going to be torn down for the sake of building up a condo. It's
Yes.
like, e- sometimes when I find myself driving through old Manila, I know that we all know that it's an old city, but how I wish that the whoever sits in managing the city will realize that there is charm to that city.
It's true.
There should be a line drawn between preserving that charm and saying yes to progress, because that charm is part of our historical identity, and we should never ever forget that. And to let's say move forward because the times dictate it, progress dictates it. Then where do you draw the line? We're in, you move forward, but you totally forget your past. No, we got to remember the past because that's where we came from.
That's
right?
true. That's true.
And sometimes I see that when I see these old buildings, which are, some of them are Art Deco buildings, some of them are kinds of buildings that will never be put up again, because the maybe the craftsmanship is not available, the
Yeah.
artistry to to create a building of that kind of caliber is, it's not in our genes, because wala tayong pasensya for
That's
that.
true.
Everything has to be, fast, fast, fast. No,
Mhm.
I can't doodle on trying to make sure that this gargoyle on this building that's looking over the street should look as menacing as when it was in the Middle Ages. Wala nang ganon.
Yeah.
Everything
Yep.
has to be so, fast, fast, fast. And I'm sure you probably also share the same sentiment when you see old buildings being demolished, or buildings which are not used, and it's like a stab to your heart. It's like, oh no,
Yeah.
meron na naman mawawala.
Sakit, di ba? Sakit.
Diba? Yeah,
Especially if
yeah,
you're an artist. Yeah. Sakit.
yeah.
Um, the there is a saying that inevitability is the most powerful of magics. Um, and change is one of those inevitabilities. We cannot stop it.
Hmm.
But the thing is, us as human beings, who also think, who is also an intelligent creature, should also think that yes, there is change, but there is a workaround for change. There's a workaround for preserving these things because this is who we are, and that's my advocacy. Actually, it's culture.
Yeah,
Um,
it is
we
culture.
we shouldn't. With the stories that I tell, I always interject something about culture, something about change, because that's what's happening right now.
Hmm.
We are slowly forgetting who we are. We are slowly becoming something else. Evolution is fine, but evolution without moral dignity and without that grasp of antiquity is um, is unsettling. You have to look back. You have to, because these are not just a way of life, but these are also lessons for us on how we should evolve and how we should evolve properly.
I
So
agree. I agree.
we
Yeah.
should never forget.
I was wondering, when you, let's say, and that's also a theme that I was, seeing through your works, and I was wondering, when you begin a series, or if not in the middle of one,
Mhm.
does the unifying theme come to mind automatically, or do you discover the theme as you do it, or by the time you are done with it?
Uh, Both actually. I'm a pantser and I'm what's the other one?
A pantser and an outliner.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I am both.
Yep, yep.
Sometimes,
There you
yeah,
go.
sometimes you do the outlines and oh, this is perfect. Tapos maya maya you're doing the story in the middle of the story. Teka, parang hindi tama to. So
Right.
it's kind of both. I can't say that I am one or the other. I am both because a concept comes into my mind. Well, basically, a concept comes into my mind,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it should revolve around that. The process is secondary. It's always the concept because I firmly believe that all stories must have a concept, must have a metaphor from
Okay.
where it comes from. So yeah, like for Manila, oh, sleeping cities or cities, dying cities with an effigy. So there. So paano ko gagawin 'yon? Outline. Okay, in outline ko sinulat ko I made a fiction work out of it. Kulang. So later on I do the comic storyboard. In the middle, mali pala to. So it doesn't really follow the outline. Sometimes it doesn't follow the outline. Sometimes it does follow the outline.
Yeah.
But that's not really important for me. Important is what the concept is and how you express the story.
Right, because I agree. It will change from the time you start and from the time you finish. It definitely will change. Reading another one of your works, there's a Tikbalang character that's named Onrak.
Mhm.
He said that we cannot be where we are now, which is in a state of discontent, yet dreaming of a better life. We must move on. Now,
Yeah.
as relatable this is to every aspect in our lives, it is also, I feel, the same way for artists. I mean, you may have creativity, you may have enormous passion for your art, But if you don't move and if you don't decide to finish and release the work, then you'll always be stuck right where you are with no productivity to speak of. Hanggang panaginip ka lang, you never put pen to paper, you never tried to draw and illustrate anything, then you will have nothing to show for. So how important is it for an artist to measure their productivity? I mean, as a writer, we have, word counts for the day or for the week to track our progress. But if you're drawing and sketching, how exactly do you track your progress to the finish line? Like one sketch a day? Paano ba?
Yeah. Okay, I didn't start like that. Okay,
Okay.
I started like when I was, especially when I was doing Tundo, because the style is simplistic. It's basically brush and dry brush. I would do like 3 pages, 4 pages a day. Yun lang gagawin ko. And then I work. I do my day job the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So that was during the weekend. So day job, parang ano eh. There's no format to it. And then I
Okay.
said when I was doing the later part of Tundo, I realized that no, I can't do it like this. I must have a system in order to finish the work, because as a visual artist in ano din eh, it when I was doing visual art, iba rin eh, because it depends on the mood. I have a concept. Sure, I have a concept. I write it down, and like when I was doing the CCP exhibits, I was writing it down, and then later on, I don't want to paint. Parang
Yep, we get those days. Tama, tama. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
pagod na yung utak ko. I don't want to paint anymore. And I was doing 5 by 6 big canvases, and I don't want to pick up. It's too hot. It's too cold. Blah, whatever. But when it came to storytelling, it came to story. The way I did it was, I put in a system, because I realized that I can't finish a book. It's different from visual art. With visual art, you can do a painting. If you're doing an abstract for one day, 10 paintings, tapos mo yon, because it depends on the expression, depends on the mood, and
Mm-hmm.
all of that. It's very conceptual, and it's very articulate. But with storytelling, it's different. You have to have a method of storytelling, especially when you're writing it, or when you're drawing it, because chances are you won't finish it.
Mm-hmm.
Tatamarin ka in the middle of it. This is too tedious, especially the art style, especially with cross hatching. It's too tedious. I can't finish this in one day. I have to finish this in 1 week. So hindi pwede yon. Especially if you're working for like Marvel or DC. Yeah, you have to churn out like in a week. Tapos mo dapat to,
Yeah,
including
that's
colors.
right. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
because storytelling is a different beast altogether. That's why let me segue to people have been saying that comic books is not literature, but it's art. Well, I disagree, because comic books tells a story, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a far different process from visual art. So, as visual art is subjective, ang comic book is telling a story, so it comes from the writer. It
We've
has a story.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
Yeah,
when you said that comics is not literature, I've talked about this in previous episodes, and
yeah,
yet till this day there will still be some people who feel that comic books are not literature. They're just things that have drawings and words on it, and they're just for children. It's like,
yeah, yeah,
no, no, no. and,
yeah.
and
That's
and maybe, I guess, depending on who says it. I mean, if
yeah.
if the person is uninitiated to the work itself, or has probably never appreciated the art form, they will obviously
Mm-hmm.
just dismiss it as that. Uy,
Yep,
ano ka na? 40 ka na, ba't nagbabasa ka pa ng comics? Pambata
that's true.
yan.
That's true.
Magbasa ka naman ng something na walang, read something with no pictures. Because, it's a picture book. You're not a
Yeah.
kid.
In
Right?
nga eh. And even picture books is not is literature. It's not art. The closest that a comic book could get for the exact literature that some people are trying to poke at
Mm.
is illustrated fiction. You have the illustrated
Right.
books. It's like comic books. It's the same because it's telling a story. Now, going back to the process, I've learned later on that I have to focus because creating a story is not as simple as it looks. It's not. It's tedious. It
Hmm.
can be draining at times. So you have to compartmentalize it. Do a page. Do one page for a day. But complete the story first, even the storyboards, because if you're doing it on the fly, it's doubly hard. There are artists who does that. Mobius does that. The French comic book
Mm.
artist Mobius. Yeah, he does that. He does his stories on the fly, um, and I can't do that. It's hard
He's the
because
ultimate pantser.
he's the ultimate pantser. Alam mo yun, chop suey, lagay mo lahat. But it's a story. Ang galing ng storya niya, ang galing ng artwork niya. But I can't do that. I'm not Mobius. So I told myself, yeah, uh, I have to do this on with a process because it's going to drive me crazy. And chop suey, hindi maganda yung labas ng story. I had this comic book called Silent Sky, which maybe later on I'm going to continue it. It's Asian sword and sorcery kind of
Hmm.
thing.
Oh.
Um, it's just one issue. I still have to continue with it. I released it back in 2016, 2017, along with the first issue of Tundo. And I had two reviews of it, international reviews, because I dropped it in Comixology for Comixology closed. So there were reviews. One review was great. The story was great. The other review was it's chop suey. I don't understand the story. Blah blah blah. So I was looking at it. I looked at it and said, nah, yeah, maybe it's chop suey. So I held it off for a moment, and
Hmm.
that made me realize because I was doing like Tundo issue 1 and this one, so medyo chop suey nga
Yeah,
ang
you're kind
dating
of
ng
like
story.
you're kind of like multitasking different projects all at the same time.
Yeah, I
So.
was I was winging it. I was really winging it. Tapos may trabaho pa ako noon. So, it was kind of, I realize now na, I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't have done that. So, yun, I realized, yeah, do one page a day. Start with the story, the concept, and then do it, trickle it down from there.
Yeah, and just like a theme in your works, your own process will also evolve the more you get into it. The more that you do it, the more you will refine it. So,
Yes.
and you said there has to be some sort of schedule that you need to follow. Would you happen to have a fixed schedule on when to write, or if not a schedule, maybe some sort of mental conditioning that you do before you draw or before you write?
Um, Before, uh, with regards to drawing, it was hard because I really didn't have a style. I was copying. I
Hmm.
started copying. My favorite artists were Rosario Topi, John J. Muth, and all of that. And then the old school Alfredo Alcala. I wanted to do the
Ah,
hatching.
yes.
Yeah, the super hatching. Sila, I wanted to do the watercolors as well. How does Milo Manara do this? Ang ganda ng color niya. I tried to copy it, but I couldn't until I realized that I have to have my own style. So, medyo sabog pa nun. Now I kind of have my own style. So the process is already there. The conditioning, it's not really these days it's not really the conditioning of how to draw it because I've been doing, it's a repetitive thing. So
Hmm.
now I'm quite familiar with the style. The conditioning is more on the story. Um, when I have something in mind, when something drops, because uh, concepts don't actually, you don't actually think of a concept. Then most of the time it's not like that for me. Sometimes the concept comes from somewhere else, a dimensional thing, probably something hits me, and then, uy, ganito pala yun. And then I write it down, or I get my cell phone, and I record myself, telling this concept. That's how it was with Gods of Manila. Because when the concept for Gods of Manila came when I was in Quiapo, doing my rounds, going to mass and all of that, and then it
Right.
hit me, and then um, I really don't dive into that. Basically digest it first. How am I going to tell the story? How do I plan to attack it? That's when I become an outliner, and
Right.
then
You sort of let it germinate
yeah,
first,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah. Parang
before
ano,
you do the execution.
it's like a long boiling tea. You have to boil it
Yeah.
like, yeah, parang ano lang yan eh. What's that? It's like beef. You have to boil it for like 12 hours before it becomes soft. Something like that. Don't quote an
Yeah. That's
analogy.
right. That's right. I agree. I agree. It's all part of that,
Yeah.
fermentation process or
Yeah, it's
whatever
the
you
ferment.
want to call
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Because
But
I wanted to make it clear. Who are the characters? What do the characters do? What's it all about? It all boils down, and then I have uh, notebooks, piled up notebooks of notes. I don't do the stickies, but I do the
mm,
notebooks. I have it, and then I process it, and then I come up with something of an outline. But in that outline, in the middle of it, hindi pala ganon. So that's when we become flying at the seat of your pants. So you change it.
yes. Moving on to your next work, there's also another series that involves a place this time around, a house, more specifically, the House of the Lost. I'm holding it up
Mhm.
here.
Yep.
This one features a new deity named Anagolay. Well, not exactly new, but for those who have forgotten, like me, she is part of our folklore,
Yeah.
and she is the goddess of lost things. So,
Yep.
how much did you enjoy researching the different deities that you used in your stories? Or probably, given that you've been doing this for a while, feeling ko refresher course na lang because lahat ng deities naalala mo.
Yes,
You remember
actually,
all of them.
I am a fan of myth from all over the world. Particularly, I started off with, of course, Greeks, the Greek gods, and then Norse. That's why I like Thor. That's why I'm still collecting Thor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
I'm
then
not up to date with the who's this guy's run?
uh,
Jason
yeah,
Aaron,
Jason.
or is and
It's
what's the other one?
it's
Donny
Donny
Cates.
Cates. Donny
Donny Cates. Yeah,
Cates.
I'm not up
Yeah,
to date with Donny Cates yet. So it's like my reading list goes on and on and on. But it's how it is. But sorry, yeah, didn't mean
yeah.
to.
No problem. Uh, and then you have the Filipino pantheons, and back when I was a kid, I thought that Bathala was God, the Catholic God. So as I grew older, and then I realized, may sarili pala tayong pantheon. And then that's when I got interested in college. I got interested with the different folklores. You have the Visayan gods, you have the Tagalog gods, and a lot of gods, the Igorot gods, a lot of gods from the different tribal peoples that we have, the
Mm-hmm.
IPs,
Right.
indigenous peoples. And with Anagolay, I actually there was like 7 8 years ago. I was who is this Anagolay that was there's this meteor or yeah, it was named after Anagolay. Or I researched the goddess of the lost, and then that's when we become interested. I'm actually uh, hesitant of using Anagolay at first because when I was doing Gods of Manila, I wanted to do this Anagolay story, and to take note of it, Beneath Tangled Dreams is connected with Gods of Manila.
It is. It is.
Yeah,
Having read that first, I kind of went through it, chronologically in the year that it
yeah,
was released. So,
yeah,
I have an observation there, but I will leave that later on when we
yeah,
get to Tangle, Gods of Manila.
yeah,
In the afterword for this Tangled Dreams, you mentioned how comics has its roots as illustrated prose, and that
Yeah.
the work itself, as you stressed, is not
Mm-hmm.
a comic. So,
Mm-hmm.
where do you draw the line between comics and illustrated prose? Others may already have their answer, but I'm just curious about your own.
It's yeah, it's the presentation of the medium actually.
Okay.
Um, it's stories. It's still stories, but it's just the presentation of the medium. There are actually comic writers who do illustrated prose. You have Jeff Lemire, you have
Yep, Jeff
Zack
Lemire. Yeah.
Snyder. They
Oh yeah.
did illustrated prose, and Neil Gaiman did an illustrated prose for Sandman.
Yeah, he did.
So yeah, it's comic books and illustrated prose are really connected in a way,
Yeah.
but it's
They're
just
like
the
half brother, half sister, or whatever.
yes, yes, totoo yun. And the only thing that's different is the presentation of the medium. But this
Yeah.
they're still stories. They're one and the
Yeah,
same.
because like what you did with Tangled Dreams, it can be considered a comic because yes, there are illustrations, but you don't have panels. So I
Yeah.
think that's how that's different. That's the deciding factor whether
Yep.
it's illustrated prose or a comic. It's
Yeah.
the lack of panels. There was also a thing that you mentioned in Beneath Tangled Dreams that the goddess Angolai found amusing about us humans is that we thought that we originated life on Earth, but clearly we did not, and that we're only part of a cosmic experiment. Also, the gray aliens of planet XB419, in addition to the Earth's original name
Yeah.
being Gamuin. I mean, consider my interest peaked, but I was wondering, where did you get the info?
Uh, it's a part of a philosophy of mine. It's actually this belief that yes, there is. Okay, let me delve on religion
Well,
a bit.
I have I'm not going to say a supporting question, but there's also an observation to that, but it might also be the same as what I'm going to be saying next, but I'll let you
Mhm.
go first.
Yeah, the belief system is that there is God and people came from God, but there's also the scientific reasoning that we came from something else. And then there is the much absurd, much science fictiony reasoning of we were propagated by aliens and all of that. So it's a mishmash of
Mhm.
that. It's
Okay.
all of that into one cohesive story.
Okay. Well, I geeked out at the mention of gray aliens because I did come across in some of my recent readings that US President Eisenhower actually met with some of the grays.
Yep,
And
yep.
our advancement in technology, like our fiber internet
Hmm.
that we're enjoying today, was one of the deals that they made in exchange for their anonymity. Yes, it is definitely an X Files worthy information, but it got me thinking, why are the documented or research information only centered around the US and Roswell and New Mexico? Why don't you hear sightings about here in the Philippines or in Manila? Or dahil naman, puro sila lang, tayo naman. Or is there a book that probably, I don't know, that I should be reading about, local sightings of UFOs?
Actually, there is actually a book. There have been local sightings here in Mount Banahaw. In
Hmm.
there was a book. I don't know if it's still out. I've read it. I don't know if we have it here, but there were sightings in Banahaw. That's yeah. It was it was
I
this was
should
a
get my
long
hands
time
on that.
ago.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's out of print already, and the author, I forgot the name at the moment. I'm blanking out on it, but the author is has already passed, and
Mm-hmm.
so with regards to his IP and his book, I don't know if his estate or members of his
Yeah. I wanted
estate
to print it.
is interested in continuing that. But how I wish that they would.
It's
Um,
also it's also an experience for me because there were times that there, were, there was this one time that we saw something flying. Me and my friend saw something flying, and we weren't drunk. We saw something
mhm.
flying in the air, and then it split like that. So it's kind of the experience as well of the background for me to be inspired to write these things because of experience
Mhm.
as well.
When I type Google, I remember, and I'm doing this now again as we speak. According to the according to this article, it says there are no recorded UFO sightings in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Okay, no recorded sightings. What about the unrecorded ones?
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's another thing to worry about.
Because as far as I remember from reading the book, it was all interviews of people who saw it. So the actual recording from actual photograph, no, because this happened in the rural areas. So wala naman silang
Yeah, that's
cameras to
right.
capture that, diba? Puro
True.
first hand encounter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know how stories are. They change from person A to person B and to the end
Yeah,
of the line.
just
It's
like our myths.
yep. Exactly. Dagdag bawas.
Yeah, may dagdag bawas yun.
Yeah. I know we've gotten off track with Philippine
Mhm.
mythology, but let's get
That's
back to the book at
okay.
hand. And then this is the one I'm going to be holding up. It's Gods of Manila Part 1.
Yeah.
And of course, because it's part 1, we should expect another one after this. So without spoiling anything as much, or as running what inspired you to write this, and did you research any new deity for this new work, or did you probably create your own mythos based on the one that we already know?
It's all of that. It's all of that.
Aha, I love the answer. All of the above.
All of
Walang
the
mali,
above.
lahat
Walang
tama.
mali yun. Tama ka. I started. Gods of Manila was actually incubating when I was at the tail end of Kingdom of Tundo. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I was again in Manila when my mom was still alive. I told her I was going to Manila, and uh, sh- I basically, it was already digesting there. What should I do next? What should I write
Mm-hmm.
next? And then the first thing propped up was the Beneath Tangled Dreams actually came first.
Okay.
So it was Anagolay, and then that concept, because it's just chapter one, so it's a long series as well. I told myself I wanted to delve in to urban fantasy instead of the mythic one like Tundo, just for a change. And then all of that, poured in, and I had this concept before of an entity that is a thought that could unmake everything, that could destroy everything.
Mm-hmm.
The, which is actually the main antagonist for Gods of Manila, was a long overdue concept, which came from playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
So there, yeah, it was long. Well, a long time ago. I told myself, what if this entity is a psionic thing that controls you, controls people. And then I thought to myself, why don't you create your own mythos about it? Why don't you create where it came from, about these uh, these these ancient civilizations that aren't there? Because I was also watching this History Channel thing, Ancient Aliens,
Mm-hmm.
and then the inspiration just popped into mind. Although I don't really watch that, it just um, the about the concept about space astronauts, ancient astronauts coming to the Earth and doing this thing. It all boiled down to that. Create your own mythos, but don't do it Cthulhu type. Don't make it too horrifying. Because I was, yeah, I'm an avid reader of Cthulhu actually. So I said to myself, sobra na pag ginawa mong masyadong horror. Um, Gawin nating mythic. Gawin
Yeah.
nating, what happens to the gods? Haluan natin yon. What happens to the gods when they're not doing anything now that people have forgotten about them? They're all in Manila. Kasi I was also reading American Gods by Neil Gaiman. So it kind of swayed in there. What happened? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
what happens to the gods when they're not doing anything, when nobody is
Thinking about them, or
thinking, praying?
remember, or
Yeah, if
remembering them. Yeah, yeah,
if
yeah.
if they're not part of society anymore. So yun, naghalo-halo na doon, and that became Gods of Manila.
After reading part 1, it felt like Avengers Part 1 for me. Felt like Endgame Part 1, wherein
Mm.
all of the lore that you used from your previous stories were applied here, on top of returning faces by way of some of the characters in there that we saw in your
Mhm.
previous work.
Mhm.
Was that always the plan to bring them all back, or it just developed as as you were?
It developed as that. It developed as that. Um, there are things that I do that I subconsciously I I don't know what I'm doing. That it 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 just develops into that.
Mm-hmm.
Parang oy, ito pala para dito. Ito pala para dito. It's something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It all falls into place. It's like a one big piece of a puzzle. One big puzzle actually. I'm doing a piece
Yeah.
of a puzzle here. Tapos one day it all just fell out. Hey, I'm doing a whole universe. I'm doing that is separate from because established na yung Kingdom of Tundo universe. Eh. That's
Mm-mm.
already been established. So I'm doing a whole new universe for myself, and these are the characters. I already did them, so why not use them? Expand on their stories. So that's it.
And I'm digging the cover. No, this is not Firestorm from DC Comics.
No, 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 no.
This is
That's
our
not.
this is our very own Thunder God.
Yeah, si ano, si Gugura. Actually, Volcano
Gugura.
God.
Volcano God,
Um,
rather. Sorry.
yeah. Uh, the IPs who revered. There's stories about him being the sun god as well.
Hmm.
But our myths are so diverse, and one story varies from another tribe. So yes, that's actually me. The There are two sides of me that I incorporated in Gods of Manila. One is Santi, one is the curious one,
Hmm.
and the other is Gugurang, the angry one, because I used to have a temper. So there are personalities in there that is part of me. That's why it was easier for me to do the story because it's me.
Is Santi the same narrator in Manila? Because I feel that he is in a way.
I don't know.
I
You
somehow
have
feel
to
that
you have to wait for part two.
Okay, you know what? I think I'm missing out on one chunk of the story where Santi got married to Morrigan.
Yeah, the Morgan.
Yeah, to the Morgan. It was here, but
Hmm.
it was not in the ones that I've read. So I know I'm missing out on some of
Yeah,
on some backstory.
that backstory will be explained in part two. Uh,
Okay,
Also,
but is that part of a comic that I don't have that I need to get?
no, 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 no.
Oh, okay.
It's all in Gods of Manila. The story
All
of
right.
Santi is all in Gods of Manila. His history, his life, as well as Gugurang. These are new stories, but yes, it is associated with my short story Manila, because
Okay.
one way or the other, it came
It
from that.
overlaps. Yeah, it
It
overlaps.
overlaps. Yeah.
I know this is part of the one of the creations there, but I don't think this guy was ever named. He's at the back of the
Oh,
cover.
that's yeah. Because in Gods of Manila, the Salaysayon infuses two or three
Yes,
creatures of lower myth, right? That's a
right.
Tamaleo, that's a Tikbalang, and a Mamiliu. A Mamiliu is the
Okay.
yeah, it's a water dragon. It's our local water dragon. So there's I came up with a couple of creatures like that. If you read Gods of Manila, there's also the Sigbin and the Swang
Yeah, yeah, there is. They're like hybrids,
hybrids.
forced
Yeah,
hybrids that are unspeakable and just really gnarly to begin
yeah,
with. And gnarly is just saying, that's putting it mildly.
yeah.
When I got this, it's like, okay, I'm seeing piranha and tikbalang and
Yeah,
what is this? Yeah, but for those who have not read it, yes, it will make sense. All of it will make sense when you start reading this, and of course when you do a little backtracking and you read all of the other stories leading up to Gods of Manila.
yeah.
Where can they get this if they want to get a copy?
Right now we're fixing it, but you
Mm-hmm.
can basically get it at my Lazada store.
Okay.
The other stuff will be later on. We're fixing the website for Gods of Manila and the social media stuff like that. We're fixing it right now.
All right. Down the line, do you see yourself collaborating with other established artists and writers? And if so, I was wondering who would be your ideal collaborator, both foreign and local?
I never really thought about that because since the beginning it was all just me, and I really wanted to have a collab because I have tons of other stories that I want to do, but um, right now, I, all the local artists who are who would want to collaborate with me, yun na lang yung sagot ko doon. Any artist who want to collaborate with me, sige, let's
In
do
short,
something.
DM or PM lang ang katapat.
Yeah, DM and PM me if you're interested.
And
Ganun
that'll
lang
be
naman yun eh.
yeah, and
I've
that'll be one project on top of whatever it is that you currently are working.
yeah, I've learned kasi long ago that I don't need to be choosy. That whatever comes my way, I should take it as it is and
Hmm.
see how I could work on it, because opportunity for me only comes once in a while.
Yeah,
And yeah, you have to be grateful and as thankful, and you also have to know how to use it properly.
yeah.
Otherwise it's just gonna slip away.
Right. I'm trying to remember where I remember this quote. Opportunity is not a lengthy visitor.
Yeah.
So I don't know from where I got that. It's from a comedy for sure, but it stuck with me, and I've always tried to live by that. Any word of advice out there for, let's say, aspiring or fellow creatives?
Don't give up. Yun lang naman yan eh.
Simple as that. Yeah.
Simple as that. Yeah, you start with something. Don't uh don't be I live by two mantras. It's humility and respect. You have to be
Hmm.
humble about it, and you have to respect others. And you should never, when you start something, you should never give up on it. It's a dream. I mean, this thing that I wanted this thing ever since I realized that I can do it, that I need to do it, that I have to do it. So I never gave up on it, even with so many obstacles that came into my life. It's just like that. So you have to be like that. You have to think of the goal, and you have to be patient about it as well, and you have to
Yeah.
strive.
All right. Patience is key. I mean, no, no, I mean, just in short, do not drop the ball. Keep your eyes on
Yeah.
the prize and do not drop the ball. Yun lang naman talaga yun eh.
Oh,
Right?
hey man, it took me 20 years to get to where I am. So,
I
ganun
mean,
lang
you're
yun.
you're you're making up for it with all the stuff that you churn out year after
Yeah.
year,
Yeah.
and kudos on you for always inspiring people to do that. Now, for those who want to know more about you and your work as well, where can they follow you and on social media?
Okay, social media, you can follow me at Paper Drawing Studio. That's Facebook and Instagram. And soon we're going to there's also Paper Drawing Studio paperdrawing.com is the website.
Mhm.
And soon Gods of Manila will be up. So I'll just post it in my social media page.
All right, that is awesome. That is a wrap for today. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us today on this episode. We appreciate all the nuggets of wisdom that you've shared about productivity and about creation, about
Mhm.
metaphor, and also about mythology. And also thank you to Spine Books for the support since day one. Now, if you are a creative and you would like to be featured on the podcast, feel free to just email us. That's urbanfantasyph@gmail.com. You can follow the show on Instagram and Facebook, and also me over at cjedmunds.com. And till the next episode, in the Authors Unite, keep creating and we will keep reading. Stay safe and stay creative. Namaste. Blessed be. Thank you, Mark, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
That was another episode of Urban Fantasy PH. Join us next time as we feature another creative soul who wants their art to be seen, heard, and shared. If you have your own work to share, just email us at urbanfantasyph@gmail.com. Till the next episode, this is independent author, singer-songwriter, radio personality, voice actor, and fellow creative, CJ Edmunds, reminding you to always listen to your heart, create with your mind, and share with your soul. Goodbye, everybody. Namaste. Blessed be.